Good day, we are group number 1 and we will be presenting our preliminary datasheet for experiment 3, which is about the measurement of humidity. My name is Goven Barrera.
Raphael, Brent, Hundangan.
Reynes.
Mark Paul Peñarroyo.
Nathan Saul Reynes.
Proceeding to the discussion for the locations that we chose for the data gathering. The first one is for Silang, Cavite, followed by Barangay 13, Metropolitan Manila, then Calamba, Laguna, followed by Lucban, Quezon, and finally, Intramuros, Metropolitan Manila. So for using this sling psychrometer, the data that we got for Silang Cavite from AccuWeather.com, this was taken Tuesday, June 22 at 10:55 a.m. So the temperature of the dry bulb is 29 degrees Celsius. The dew point is 23 degrees Celsius. And the relative humidity, which is the indoor humidity, is at 68%. These temperatures will have to be converted into Fahrenheit for us to plot in the psychrometric chart plot. So the chart, we got it from the engineeringtoolbox.com, and I used the temperature of the dew point and the temperature of the dry bulb as the initial plots for me to reference where I would be able to estimate the relative humidity, in which I estimated it to be 70%. So from this chart, we can find the other data like the enthalpy, which is 39.8 British thermal units per pound of dry air, the temperature of the wet bulb to be 76.2 Fahrenheit, and so on and so forth. This will be discussed later on. So using an online calculator for psychrometric calculations from the Sugar Engineers, we inputted the temperature of the dry bulb and the temperature of the dew point to calculate all of the other necessary properties of air. So comparing the psychrometric chart plot and the online calculator, the only significant difference were in the absolute humidity, enthalpy, and relative humidity. And as you may observe, it is only varying by a few percentage. So this is most likely due to estimation error from the chart plot, as it is only, as you may observe here, it is only accurate for about a decimal point. Whereas for the online calculator, it is accurate for a lot of decimal points. That is it.
Continuing further, for Barangay 13, Metropolitan Manila, the accurate weather report is as shown. And from here, we can take that the dry bulb temperature to be 30 degrees and the dew point to be 24 degrees Celsius. And relative humidity to be 69%. Converting these, we would get 86 and 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Continuing to the chart, the psychrometric chart. If we plot those points, we can get that the 3 lines coincide, and thus we can take the saturation temperature or the wet bulb temperature to be at around 77 degrees Fahrenheit, the enthalpy to be around 41.8 or around 41.2, I guess, and the specific volume to be 14.2 foot cube per pound. In inputting the values taken from AccuWeather to the online calculator, we could also obtain the values using the online calculator. From here we can get the wet bulb temp to be 77.9, the relative humidity to be 70.3, the enthalpy to be 41.39, and specific volume to be 14.16. Next. From that, the only major difference is in enthalpy, where it is more than off by uh, about a percent compared to the others. But again, this is only due to the lack of precision from the chart.
Now we move on to our data we move on to our third trial, which was taken from data from AccuWeather for Calamba, Laguna on Tuesday, June 22 at 11:32 a.m. For our analysis, the two values that we took from AccuWeather was the dew point temperature and the relative humidity. The value that we did not take was the dry bulb temperature, which is the current weather here. We had to convert the values of the temperature to Fahrenheit so that we could plot it on the psychrometric chart. Moving on, this is how we plotted our values on the psychrometric chart. You see the two values that we took, which was the relative humidity of 60 degrees, which is represented by that yellow curve, and the dew point temperature, which is represented by the horizontal red colored line, which represents 73.4 degrees Fahrenheit. From the intersection of those two lines, we could get the point, and we could also find out all of the other lines that intersect at that point for the values of all the other properties that we wanted to take from this chart for our table. And then we recorded all of those values into our table. Moving on, we also had to take the values that we also had to calculate for the values using a psychrometric calculator. In this case, we used the dry bulb temperature of 87.8 from AccuWeather report, and we also used the dew point temperature of 73.4. Inputting those values and clicking calculate, we could get all of the other values for the other properties that we want to get. For our humidity ratio, it was in units pound over pounds. We had to convert that using an online converter to change it to grains per pound. And then we got all the values and also recorded them into our table. Moving on, this is the final table of all of our results, uh, showing all of the plotted values from the chart and also the values from the online calculator. The values on the online calculator for the dry bulb temperature is also the value that we did not take from the AccuWeather report, which is also being compared now to the plotted values. So once again, there are some discrepancies between the plotted values and the calculated values. Um, for the same reason as well, some inaccuracies perhaps from our plotting. That's our all the values we got for Calamba, Laguna.
So next we have Lukban, Quezon. So at 11:07 a.m., we have recorded that we have a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius and our dew point of 22 degrees Celsius. We also have a humidity of 81%. And converting this, we would have 77 degree Fahrenheit of our dry bulb temperature, and our dew point is 71.6 Fahrenheit. So moving on. So after we have converted our temperatures, our dry bulb and dew point temperatures, we now continue to our calculator. So using those both values, automatically we would have the the values that are missing from our table. So from the wet bulb temperature to the relative humidity, we would have these values based from our calculator. So next we have our psychrometry chart plot for our location here at Lokban, Quezon. So in our chart plot, we can see that our relative humidity is 81%. Our dry bulb temperature is at 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and the dew point temperature is at 71.6 Fahrenheit. So lastly, our comparison of our chart plot and online calculator. So as we could see in our table of comparison, there is no much of a difference between both values, but in our relative humidity, we have a 2% difference in our value. So as you can see that we know that the higher the relative humidity, the high amount of water vapor and moisture we have. So we could say that we could have a wetter outside our environment here at Tukban, Quezon due to the higher relative humidity compared to the other locations that are discussed. So it is also because of the moisture and this relative humidity value. Having this, we would have a higher chance that it will rain here at Lokban, Quezon.
Okay, so this information was gotten from Intramuros, Metro Manila on Tuesday, June 22nd at 11:08 a.m. And you can see that the temperature is 30 degrees Celsius and the dew point is 24 degrees Celsius. Moving on. We were able to input the converted temperatures into the dry bulb temperature at 86 degrees Fahrenheit and the dew point temperature at 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit. And thus we're able to get all these values from the calculator. Moving on. Now, checking the chart, we're able to get these values for the temperature of the dry bulb. We're able to get 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and the temperature of the dew point, we're able to get 73.4 degrees Fahrenheit, and the relative humidity was 70%. Moving on. Now, on the final difference between the chart plot and the online calculator, we're able to get the absolute humidity at for the chart plot at 132.2, but the one for the online calculator is 132.17. And for our relative humidity, there's not that much discrepancy, just that of 1%. And also the enthalpy is a bit close, but it's less than 1% discrepancy. So the values are pretty close together.
That concludes the presentation of group number 1 for the preliminary datasheet of experiment 3. Thank you very much for listening.